little. Okay, so I just thought I'd tell everybody that we're recording this, so we can put it on our YouTube channel and share all the wisdom that you're gonna get from Jade, today. Jade is from the Alcohol Gaming Commission of Ontario, and she's gonna make it legal and, not make it legal, make it, make sure that we're all in compliance to the Ontario Liquor Board. Looks like we have, oh, thank you for that. Welcome, welcome. So good morning, Jade. Welcome to the Small Business Center in Belleville, and take it away.
Thanks. Hey guys, hi Bill, hi Yulia. Nice to see you.
Hello.
I'm just gonna minimize this and maximize my presentation here.
Oh, I forgot to ask Jade, did you want people to interact with you or questions at the end?
Yeah, no, I'm happy to take questions as they come up.
All
So just holler them out and interrupt me. It's an informal presentation, but I want you guys to get the most experience out of it. So feel free. So my name is Jade and I'm an inspector with the Alcohol and Gaming Commission of Ontario. I have been an inspector for 19 years. I spent my first 17 years in downtown Toronto in the entertainment district, doing all of the large scale nightclubs, sporting facilities, any large venue basically was under my purview along with some other inspectors. So I have a pretty wide range of knowledge in terms of liquor compliance. I've been doing this a long time. So I'm happy to answer any questions that you may have. My specialties are liquor, cannabis, and we also regulate horse racing, lottery and gaming, any OLG terminal. So we do all of the basically all of the vices in Ontario, but my specialty is liquor. So I'm going to go over what's called the Big Five with everybody. And why we call it the Big Five is because there's 5 basic violations that will get you into trouble with us the quickest. And so basically things that you want to avoid. So the first one is minors. The second one is permitting intoxication and selling or serving to an intoxicated or impaired person. Permitting disorderly conduct, overcrowding, and before and after hours service, and fail to remove signs of service. So I'm going to go over each of these 5 in some depth. And again, please feel free to ask questions. Some of them may not pertain to you depending on your hours of operation and the type of business that you run. However, these are the public safety violations that we look into the most. We are a risk-based regulatory enforcement agency, because why we look for public safety violations, obviously in the public interest. So these are the biggest public safety violations for us that basically drive our work. So we'll get started with minors. So in Ontario, you have to be 19 years of age to have liquor in your possession or to consume it. So actually have it in your hands or to drink it. You can be 18 to serve or handle liquor as an employee in an establishment, but you have to be 19 to drink it. So when we ask for identification, that must include a photo, a date of birth, and it reasonably appears to have been issued by a government agency or the LCBO. Bring your own ID card or bring your ID card. ID must be requested if a person appears to be under the age of 19. And minors are permitted in licensed establishments unless you have a condition on your license that prohibits it. So we'll dive into that a little bit more. So in terms of checking identification, if someone appears to be youthful in age, you must ask for identification. So when you do that, it is very important that you have the identification and it reasonably appears to have been issued by a government agency. That government agency does not have to be in Ontario. However, the most common recognizable forms of identification are obviously Canadian IDs. So Canadian passport, I think I have a slide next. Canadian passport, Ontario driver's license, the citizenship card, the LCBO ID card, the Canadian Armed Forces ID card, the Canadian Secure Indian Status card, and the Canadian Permanent Resident card, and also a photo card issued under the Photo Act. So these are acceptable forms of identification. Should you choose to accept anything other than this, that is fine. You just have to feel absolutely comfortable in accepting that form of ID. So in Ontario, obviously, we have a large tourism population. So if you get a ID card from, let's say, Italy, you get an Italian driver's license. We do not expect you to know what the Italian driver's license looks like. However, Google is your best friend.
Mhm.
So make sure you do Google what an Italian driver's license looks like. Take the time to look at that ID, take the time to, make sure that it appears to be what it says it is online. You can also get a ID checking guide. Every year they come out with this new guide that gives you all forms of identification. I believe it's across North America. I don't believe it's into Europe, but again, Google is really great. I've done that when I've been working too, and just make sure that you are really assessing the identification. So some tips on how to check ID, which is really important. Use good lighting. So when you're asking for identification, if you're in an area where you can't see the ID, then obviously that's not going to be very helpful to you. So if you employ staff that, let's say, are outside in a venue, make sure that they have flashlights or that they're under a good light, and making sure that they can see the ID 100%. Look at the individual presenting the identification. So when you ask someone for ID and they hand you their driver's license or whatever ID card they have, the first thing that you're going to want to look at is the actual picture, because if the picture doesn't match, then all of the other information really doesn't matter, because you're possibly dealing with someone whose ID that is not theirs. So making sure that you check the face, the picture, and look for details that don't necessarily change. Obviously, as we get older, some of our features do change on our ID card. So looking for things like eye shape, looking for where your ears are located, nose shape, things that don't necessarily change over the years, and making sure that photo actually matches the person in front of you. Take physical possession of the ID card. So never let someone show you their identification in their wallet. So don't let them hold it up and have you look at it from afar. Ask them to take it out of their wallet and hand it to you so you can actually feel the card, right? You want it in your hand, you want to be able to see it up close, and you want to be able to notice any inconsistencies on that identification. So manipulate the card, hold it, touch it, feel it, bend it, make sure that there's nothing that's on that card that shouldn't be, and ask the individual a few simple questions. So when I ask for identification from someone that looks to be youthful in appearance, we do nothing special as inspectors. We just ask simple questions that you guys can also ask. So what I tend to do is I tend to have the ID in my hand. I then ask the questions like, what's your name? Obviously, they're going to get that correct. If they don't, then you're off to a good start. Then you're going to ask for their address. And again, minors, if they're using fake ID or an ID that's not theirs, tend to memorize all of that information. So they're probably going to get the address right. You're going to ask them for their date of birth. They'll probably get that right too. And then what I like to do is I like to go back to one of the first questions I ask after I've gotten that information out and say, what street did you say you lived on again? Mm-hmm. Because they get tripped up. They don't expect to be asked those questions again. They think they've gotten all the information out. And so that's the end of the interrogation, if you were, but you trip them up. And that's all you're looking for is a deer in the headlights, and them to say, and then give a wrong answer, hesitate on giving an answer, and that's when you go forward in your questioning. I also like to ask people what their sign is. So, let's say they were born in July 5th. I say, what sign are you? Most people know their astrological sign, but it's just another way to get them to kind of trip up. Always inspect both sides of the identification. There is information on the other side of the ID, so making sure that you check that. If there is a signature on the back of the ID, you can ask them to sign a piece of paper and check the signatures. A lot of minors do not practice signature writing, so that you might get tripped up on the signature looking a bit different. So you can always do that. and be familiar with those out of province or out of country types of ID. So really important to, when you take the time to check ID, it's really, really important that you go full out, because if you're asking for it, it means you're a little bit unsure about that person. And so if they are only checking, are only giving one piece of identification and you're not sure, ask for a second piece of ID. You cannot ask for the health card. You can accept it as a piece of ID, but you cannot ask for it. So if someone has a driver's license and you're not sure about that license, then you can say, do you have another piece of ID I can see? And they can say, oh, I only have my health card. That's fine. You can accept that. But you can also accept other pieces that have their name on it, their signature on it, things that will just make you feel comfortable to serve them alcohol. And at the end of the day, when in doubt, do not serve. It's as simple as that. It's not worth taking the chance that, you know, you have the spidey senses in the back of your hair is standing up and you just are like, I'm not too sure, I'm going to go for it. It's not worth the risk. They can come back another day with a second piece of ID.
Right.
And that's the end of the story. All right. We also don't, you shouldn't accept expired identification. Expired ID is not valid. The reason for that is, you know, I could have an expired identification that I give to my sister who looks like me, and I have my current ID. Now there's two Jades running around the province, which would not be good for anybody. So you want to make sure that you don't accept any kind of expired identification. Does anyone have any questions about minors, checking identification, anything of that nature?
Very detailed. Thank you. That was awesome.
No problem. Okay. Oh, we have number 8. Pay attention to the individual's body language. Yes, absolutely. So when you're asking questions of minors or youthful looking people, if they're nervous, if they're hesitating, if they're trying to, you know, pay for their drink in all quarters, maybe that person isn't, you know, should have a drink. Maybe that person is youthful. So again, it's all about looking at who you're talking to. I've seen lots of security officers and bar staff check ID and basically take a look at the ID. Don't even look at the person and just serve them the drink. It's really important that if you're asking the question is to take your time, and if you personally don't have the time to deal with it, then pass it along to someone who does. Give it to a manager, give it to another server, give it to the owner, and have them vet the ID, and you can move on to something else, but making sure that you're paying attention to all of those items.
I think that's really key to remember, because a lot of the times, you know, you ask for it and there's a reason why you're asking, and you forget that because you're busy and the next guy and they want to drink and like, you know, and it's like, I think that's really awesome to like, okay, you've asked and there's a reason.
That's
So
right.
Finish the job, right?
That's right. Yeah, 100%.
Brilliant. Thank you.
So why you would refuse to accept some ID? So obviously the person doesn't look like themselves on the photo, you know, knowing that people do change their look, but if you're really unsure of that photo, you shouldn't accept it. Image information is illegible. If it has been through the wash a million times and you can't read the details and things look scratched out and faded, don't accept it. If it's damaged, tampered, or altered in any way, it's not a valid ID and you should not be accepting it. And the ID does not meet the requirements. A little story, I asked someone for their identification once, and it was at a festival, and they actually presented me with a piece of paper that they had stuck on a photo of themselves with tape and handwritten the identification, the portion of it. And someone actually accepted that information and ID. So obviously that does not meet the requirements of what ID should be, and you should not be accepting those items. So it could be a house policy that you only accept Ontario or Canadian forms of identification. However, you know, note that you might be excluding a lot of your customer base if you do that. So it's really important to, you know, get that ID checking guide if you need it, have Google, you know, really up and ready, and then you should be able to accept multiple forms of ID and feel comfortable in doing so. Okay, so we're going to move on to permitting intoxication and selling and serving to an intoxicated person. So in Ontario, you cannot be intoxicated in a licensed establishment. It is illegal to be intoxicated. You also cannot sell or serve liquor to a person who appears to be intoxicated or impaired by drugs, alcohol, or a mixture of the two. So it's always best practice to focus efforts on responsible service and preventing intoxication as a whole. And we as inspectors can cite a violation of permitting intoxication if we can see a patron exhibiting 3 or more signs of intoxication. So as inspectors, when we come in to do an inspection, we're obviously not there to find you as employees doing something wrong. We're there to ensure compliance, and all we do is we look around and we see if there's anyone exhibiting signs of intoxication or impairment. And we just watch that person, you know, and see what it is that we're seeing. And if they are impaired in some way, if they're acting different than other patrons in your establishment, we want to focus our efforts on ensuring that that person is safe. And that's what you should be doing as well. Once you have a person who's showing 3 or more signs of being intoxicated, you officially have someone that's impaired in your premises. Once they're on your premises in that state, they are your responsibility until they're no longer intoxicated. So serving them water, serving them food, coffee is not going to get them to a point where they're sober. So the key is to focus your efforts on not getting that person to the point where they're showing 3 or more signs of being intoxicated. So if you have someone that's at the door, let's say, or close to the door, you watching for people coming in already impaired from somewhere else. And again, once they're on your premises, they're your responsibility. So if you're a food establishment and they want to come in just to get food and not drink, but they're intoxicated, you cannot let them into your establishment.
Wow.
Once they're on the premises, again, they are yours to keep. So it's really important to ensure that that doesn't happen.
And how many times does that happen?
Oh,
Like, all the time. You're in a restaurant yourself and all of a sudden a gang comes in and they're loud and they're laughing and you're like, whoa, they've had some.
yeah.
Right.
And so even if you don't serve them alcohol,
Wow.
you can be liable for having them in the premises. So really important to assess people, and we'll talk about how to assess an intoxicated person, but really important to assess people before you decide to serve them a drink and have them in your establishment at all. So we're looking for things like that when we come in and do an inspection. And here's some recognizing intoxication. So slurred and incoherent speech. So really important to assess that person upon their entry or when they sit down and just ask them simple questions like, hey, how is it going today? Have you ever been here before? What do you think of the weather? What's your day been like? Where were you before? Anything to get them talking, because if they've had a few drinks and they know they're kind of on the verge, but they want to, I'm just going to admit somebody here.
Oh, thank you.
No problem. Even if they are wanting to hold it together just to get kind of their first drink order in, it's your responsibility to ensure that they're able to have a drink from you. So the only way to do that is to engage with your customers, right? You don't have to do an interrogation where you hold a flashlight in their face and start yelling questions at them, but it's really simple speech, right? Just, you know, how are you? All of those things. Get them to speak to you. Can you smell alcohol in their breath? Are they slurring their words? Can you understand what they're saying? Poor enunciation, pace of speech. Is it super slow, super fast? Inappropriate volume. Is your place of business really quiet and they're yelling? Is your place really loud and they're whispering? So why the difference? You're looking for things that are out of place and that may flag to you that this person may not be able to have a drink at your establishment or stay on the property. The eyes may be tired, looking, red, watery, glossy. That also could be allergies. That also could be tiredness. Right? It may not be linked to alcohol consumption, but it's a sign that you should be aware of in order to ask further questions. Their deterioration of fine motor skills and hand-eye coordination. If you've ever seen someone who's had a few drinks, balance and stuff is off, and so they'll maybe take their drink and try and put it on the bar and miss the bar. They go to pay you for their drink and they drop all of their money on the floor. They go to hand you their identification, and instead of handing you their Ontario driver's license, they hand you their, I'm going to date myself, Blockbuster video card, for instance. So things that are just, you know, key to you that things might not be going well for them at this moment. Staggering, swaying, unsteady on their feet, decreased alertness or tiredness. I once had a gentleman in a nightclub who I saw, and he was asleep by a speaker in a nightclub.
Oh
And
my
his
goodness.
head was actually on the speaker and it was bouncing off the speaker because of the music. And I thought for sure this guy must be intoxicated. How is he sleeping? He must be passed out.
Yeah.
I attempted to wake him up several times. He wasn't waking. Finally, after the third or fourth little poke, he woke up. His eyes were red. They were glossy. And I thought for sure, now I've got 3 signs of intoxication, right? I couldn't wake him. His eyes are red and glossy. He's sleeping. And so I asked him to stand and come and talk to me in a different area where it was quieter. He stood fine. He walked towards me. He wasn't staggering. When I spoke with him, he had no smell of alcohol in his breath. So I said to him, like, is everything okay? Like, why are you sleeping in a nightclub? And how much have you had to drink? And he said, I actually haven't had anything to drink. I literally got off work. I'm exhausted and I fell asleep.
Oh my goodness. Wow.
So all of the things to say is that a single sign of drunkenness or multiple signs of drunkenness is not necessarily linked to being drunk. Is this person sick, right? Are they having a diabetic reaction, high blood sugar, low blood sugar? Are they on medication that is interacting with maybe the first drink that they had? Do they have heat stroke, right? Have they been outside all day, maybe golfing, and then coming to your place to have, a couple of drinks on the patio, and then all of a sudden their first drink, it sends them over the edge, right? So all of these things that you're going to want to link together and ask the questions. They might not always be intoxication, but they're going to be things that you're going to want to know anyways. Inappropriate sweating and flushed skin. In the summertime, I expect people to sweat and their face to be red. However, if they're inside and it's a bit chilly out and they're experiencing those symptoms, like, what is going on for them? Right? So these are the questions that you need to ask. Hey, is everything okay with you? Do you need some water? Anything that you notice that may be causes for impairment are super important. However, it might not necessarily be that they're drunk, but they're things that you want to explore. And if they're showing any of these signs, you have to make the decision as the holders of the alcohol is, are they gonna get a drink from me today, in an hour, in 15 minutes? What is going on for this person and do I want to serve them a drink? Any question on recognizing intoxication?
That's great. Great.
Perfect. So how to prevent intoxication. This is super important. And this is what you really want to strive for, because you guys as license holders really are the holders of alcohol. And so someone has to ask you to get a drink, and it really needs to be you that decides whether that person has a drink. And then you need to prevent them from becoming intoxicated. So again, interview and assess, talk to customers before they enter or before taking their drink order. Just that simple conversation. Beautiful day out there, isn't it? What have you guys been doing today? Get them to talk to you and assess them. It's always your decision whether to permit them entry or to serve them a drink. So if your managers and owners and your staff come to you and say, I'm not comfortable serving this patron because they're showing signs of intoxication, support them, back them up, because they're the ones that are on the line for serving someone who is intoxicated. As owners or managers, unless you're the one that's actually serving the drink, you don't bear that liability. It's the actual servers that bear the liability. So if your employees are saying, listen, I've noticed a couple signs of intoxication, I'm not comfortable serving them again, back up your employees, because that's the only way that you're going to keep people safe in your establishment. And that's the only way that they're going to feel comfortable serving in your establishment, knowing that if they come to you and say they're not comfortable, that they're going to be supported by you. Monitor customers for emerging signs of intoxication. So if you do table service, for instance, go to the table every so often and just chat with people. You don't necessarily have to take drink orders, but making sure that you're talking to people. What are they doing? Are they going to the washroom a lot? Where are they going? How is their volume level? Are they showing different signs than they did 10 minutes ago? So you're constantly monitoring them. And if you're noticing that people are, starting to, show one sign of intoxication, then do things to slow that down, right? Don't go to the table as often. Bring water. If they ask you for a drink, just say, oh, you know what? I'm actually not too sure if we have that. Let me go take a look. Take your time. Don't be so at the ready to serve them more drinks and more drinks. So really monitor them and slow service down if you have to. Offer alternative beverages, water, give them a jug of water, put it on the table, offer them a pop. Again, it's your house, your rules. And you really need to just make sure that the alcohol consumption is slowing down at the point where if you're noticing these signs. Have food available. Sometimes, places don't have food, like in a busy nightclub, no one's really ordering food at a nightclub. But have food available if someone is, showing those signs of intoxication or that they're not feeling well. Even if you have, the bare minimum, get them something to eat and, hopefully that can stave off further signs. Ensure communication flows among employees. So if you have multiple employees at your establishment and someone goes up to one of your employees and asks for a drink and that employee says, no, I'm not going to serve you right now. Let's, have some water, see how you do in 10 minutes. Let all of the other employees know that that person has been cut off for now, forever, for the time being, because that person's going to go to a different bar, a different area, right, and try and get another drink. So every employee, including managers, including security, if you have it, all of the employees should know, even if you're wait staff, your bussers, everybody in the property should know that this person has been cut off. So if they do see them drinking, whether they've been given a pass off from somebody else,
Right.
It's important for you to know that that can't happen. Develop, post, and enforce a house policy on intoxication. So one of the biggest things that I can suggest for you is making sure that all of your staff know what the deal is if you do have an intoxicated person on site, who they tell, what the next steps are, where the person goes, who gets called, all of those things. Because if your staff don't know what to do, and they don't know that they should be stopping service or telling you, then things are going to go south really quickly, and that person's going to continue to drink, continue to show signs of intoxication, all of those things. So developing a policy on preventing intoxication and then dealing with someone who is intoxicated is super, super important. In terms of intoxication too, when in doubt, if you've got someone who is intoxicated, never hesitate to call the police. The police are there to assist you in helping that patron. So let's say, you've got someone that's showing 3 or more signs of intoxication, you've missed the signs and now you're at the stage where they're intoxicated, and you're trying to get them out of the establishment, maybe into a cab, maybe with a sober driver, and they're just not having it. Never put yourself in any danger. Never, continue a fight with somebody if they're being unruly or anything like that. Just call the police, right? And just, tell the police that you're having trouble getting an intoxicated patron out and you would like some assistance. So I would rather everybody do that and, acknowledge the fact that they have someone who's intoxicated on their premises, then get themselves into any trouble by, starting a fight with someone, having that person leave and go into their car and drive home. So it's better to just err on the side of caution if you must do that. Part of having those house policies, it's really important to so that everyone knows kind of how to deal with someone who's intoxicated. Maybe your servers are youthful and haven't had, a great deal of experience. So maybe that person should be spoken to by a manager or an owner instead of the bartender. And then just ensuring that that you are responsible for that person until they're no longer intoxicated. So in Ontario, even if you drive them home and tuck them into bed, if you have gotten them intoxicated and they get out of their bed and drive a car and hurt somebody, technically you could be held responsible for that depending on your role in getting them intoxicated and what you did or didn't do to assess your liability. So always really important to make notes. If you ever have to cut somebody off or remove somebody from the establishment, document it. Basic time, date, and what happened and the steps that you took. Did you call them a cab? Did you tell their sober friend? What basically you did to limit your liability and to ensure that they have a safe ride home. So the key is, if you're taking anything away from preventing intoxication, is basically don't get them to this stage at all. Monitor them, monitor them, monitor them, and don't let them in if they're already showing signs of intoxication. Does anyone have any questions about preventing or allowing intoxication?
I think that what we forget is like, oh, it's fun, having a little, buzz on or whatever, and how fine the line is, like that one more drink that too close to within that hour. And all of a sudden you're over the line and you're causing issues. It's not fun for everybody else, and it is dangerous, and I think that's what you were trying to bring across here, if I'm not mistaken, James. It's like, it's dangerous to be intoxicated in a place because you're no longer in control of anything.
Absolutely.
As the intoxicated person.
Yeah, and it's not good for business. You've got a couple of drunk people in your
Yeah.
business and creating havoc, and you have other guests that are trying to have a good time and just, be, quiet and enjoy your scenery. And then all of a sudden you've got a group that's, 2 or 3 signs deep into being intoxicated. And it's just for your business. It's certainly not good for them to be in this state. So really important to just make sure that you're just assessing all of the time. And remember, it's your house, your rules, and as long as you're not discriminating against somebody, you absolutely can tell them that they are no longer able to have an alcoholic beverage and that their night or their day is finished at your establishment, and you're going to provide them a safe way home or ensure that they have a safe way home as well.
Thank you.
Are the signs for intoxication similar for drug use? Like if they step outside to maybe smoke something?
Yeah, so good question. If you all heard that online, just so you know, are the signs similar for drug use? I'm going to go into permitting use of narcotics and a little bit of drug kind of signs. Absolutely a good question. And as we all know that, cannabis is legal now. So there is a part of that really needs to be looked at and assessed, but we'll certainly discuss that, but really good question. And just remember, it's not necessarily intoxication, it's impairment.
Right.
So however that impairment shows up, whether it's by pills, whether it's by illegal narcotics, whether it's by cannabis, it's about impairment. And if that person is impaired, should they have another drink is kind of what you have to assess. So I'll go into that a little bit further, but excellent question. So permitting disorderly conduct. So unlawful gambling or disorderly conduct is not permitted in your establishment or in adjacent areas under the exclusive control of the licensee. So basically, in terms of gambling, don't have poker games or roulette, anything like that on the premises. And disorderly conduct in terms of fighting is not allowed. So what we say in regards to that, if a fight breaks out in your establishment, we want to ensure that you have a plan in place and you know what to do if that should occur. So do you have a policy? If a fight breaks out all of a sudden, what are we doing? And again, you never want to put yourself in any danger or your employees in any danger. So when in doubt, call 911. Assess people, if you're walking by a table and you hear tempers are flaring and maybe, a little argument is starting and you can diffuse the situation, great. But again, if it's, you're worried about what's going to happen, call 911. So if a fight does break out, it could happen very suddenly. Just again, don't put yourself in any sort of danger. Don't get involved unless you feel like you can handle the situation. Maybe it's just verbal, but if it's a physical altercation, call in the troops that are used to dealing with these things so that you don't get yourself into any bad situations or your employees. You cannot permit a person to hold, offer for sale, sell, supply, or consume a controlled substance on the premises. So basically the wording in the Liquor License and Control Act is permit the use of narcotics. So if I walk into an establishment and I see someone at your bar in front of the bartender and they have, let's say, a bag of cocaine out and they're, pouring a little bit of the cocaine out and they're right in front of you and you're not doing anything about it, then that's a good permit use of narcotics, right? You obviously can see it happening, it's in front of you, and you cannot allow that to happen. Now, if a person goes into a single stall washroom
Right.
and pops a pill, are you aware that that's happening? Probably not. If you have, you know, a situation where a person's consistently going to the washroom, maybe every 5 minutes with a group of people, with a single person, and they're coming out and their behavior's changing, then it's possible that you should know that something potentially is going on in that washroom. You should be going into the washrooms and checking to make sure that you're not seeing 4 feet in a stall. Why is that happening, right? It could be that one of the patrons in your establishment is not feeling well. You're going to want to know that information as well.
Yeah,
The important part is to know what people are doing in your establishment, where they're going, and what behaviors that they are engaging in. I will tell you that people will do things in your establishment if they think that they can get away with it. They don't really care about the liability piece for you. So it's super important that if you have these areas in your establishment that, you know, people can hide or, you know, be not seen. It's important for you to make sure that you go and check these areas out. And just like the third point says, you must ensure that reasonable measures are in place and efforts are made to deter disorderly conduct on the behavior or behavior on the adjacent premises or in the vicinity. So again, your parking lot, your patios, just outside of your front door, those are all areas under your control. All of the patrons that are there are yours because they're coming into your establishment or on your property. So you have to make sure that you are checking those areas to make sure that people are not doing things that they shouldn't be doing. Any questions about permitting disorderly conduct? So
Quiet
again,
group.
yes.
Quiet group.
Quiet group, all good, all good. It feels like a Monday, but it's actually a Tuesday. So gambling is pretty easy. Any money or money's worth, game of chance or mixed chance and skill. What I would say to that is if you have a question, if you can offer these type of games or things on your premises, consult your own legal team, and they can tell you whether or not it's considered gaming or gambling. And then fighting is an example of disorderly conduct. And how to prevent it. So anticipate problems before they occur. So, you know, if you are seeing a large bus full of people coming to your establishment, you know, maybe you greet them at the door and watch them get off the bus. And maybe, you know, you're seeing that, oh, you know, 4 of them just stepped off to the side to smoke a joint. Well, marijuana is legal. They're certainly able to do that in an area where they can smoke either cigarettes or cannabis. So they're not breaking any of the Ontario smoke-free Ontario rules. So that's fine. But now you know that 4 people have just smoked a joint. Maybe that's going to affect them in a negative way, maybe not, but that's when you're going to assess, right? That's where you're going to assess those people to say, you know what? I'm going to give you a little break right now before we serve you a drink. You know, you just smoked a joint outside, whatever you've got to say, those things. But again, you're just assessing whether they should have a drink or not. Maintain appropriate customer versus staff ratio. We all know that staff is very, very difficult to find these days. And so if you are short-staffed, then maybe you don't allow as many people as you normally would into the establishment on that day. Because at the end of the day, if your customers are overrunning your staff, then things are going to fall by the wayside. ID is not going to be checked appropriately. You're not going to have the people to go outside and check those areas, checking the washrooms, monitoring for signs of intoxication. You're really going to put yourself at a disadvantage if you don't have the appropriate staff. So each day you really have to, you know, look at your staff to customer ratio, who you're going to have in that day, and plan accordingly. Keep an incident log. This is one of the biggest things that I can suggest for people. It doesn't have to be anything fancy. It could be a piece of paper, it could be a logbook, something on the computer. Have your staff fill that out every single day. Did anything happen today that was noteworthy? Right? Did I have to refuse service to someone? Did I have to not let somebody in? Did I have to break up a fight? Did I catch someone doing drugs in the bathroom? All of these things are really important to document. And if you have cameras, even better, make sure your cameras are always operational and are pointing at appropriate places in the establishment. And that incident log is going to help you that if the police or the Alcohol and Gaming Commission comes back to you and says, on this date, at this time, this happened, what can you tell us about it? You're able to go back to something and say, oh yes, I remember that now. We actually cut that person off. We called them a cab. They got into the cab at this time and they drove away. So that's going to help you in having us assess, did you do everything that you could in that certain situation? Prohibit staff drinking on the job. Now, it is not illegal for staff to consume alcohol while working, not illegal. However, is it a good business decision? That's something that you're going to have to ask yourself. If staff are drinking on the job, are they able to assess patron behavior? Are they able to, effectively do their job that they are being paid for at that time? So, have a house policy in place that staff can't drink on the job. After they're finished their work, they can have one drink at the establishment. They can have no drinks at the establishment, whatever you see fit for your type of establishment. But, realistically, should staff be drinking while they're working and serving alcohol? It's probably not the best idea, however, not illegal, but that's something that you're going to have to decide, and have a house policy on is always the best option. If you need security, whether it's for a particular event, whether it's for every single day, depending on the type of business that you run and the events that you hold, do it. If there is a possibility that things, could get out of hand, we've all been to weddings. I'm sure that, some people get a little excitable at some times, maybe having security there is a good idea. It's gonna, help to calm the waters and take the pressure off your staff to having to deal with that. So really assess, does your business need security for a particular day or event, and then plan for that as well. Security or staff should carefully monitor those areas like washrooms and outside to deter potential trouble and handle incidents as needed. So if you're not looking in those areas, you're not going to find things wrong, and that's where people are going to be doing those things. So again, washroom checks are super important. Has someone passed out in there? Outside, go around the building, look in your parking lot. And again, if you don't want to do something about something you've seen, whether people, let's say, are tailgating, drinking their own alcohol, then employ someone who can look after that or call the police.
Right.
Remove patrons from the establishment if necessary. Unfortunately, that is part of this business, and people cannot be intoxicated on the establishment. They can't be doing drugs in the establishment. They can't be causing problems on the establishment. So you may have occasion to remove these patrons if necessary. So, practice your game. It's really hard to tell people that they can't have another drink. It's really hard to tell people that their night is over and give them the bill, but just practice, 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 and run through drills with your staff, right? The more that they can be confident about speaking to people in this way, the better off it's going to be for you. And there are times that you have to tell patrons this, and it's just part of doing business in this industry.
Good, I like that point. That's great.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
And again, police are your best friends. Call them when you need assistance. Because the use of narcotics is in this section, I'll just go back to your point here, is that it's about impairment. So people have been smoking marijuana for ever and a day. Now it's legal. So we have to remove, well, it's legal and they can do it, and that's fine. They can continue to drink, but it's really about impairment. If you smoke a joint and you're not used to smoking marijuana, it may hit you different than someone else who has been smoking it for 20 years. So that's something that you're going to have to assess. If someone's taking Benadryl because they have allergies and then they have a glass of wine, they might pass out after that one glass of wine. So again, it's really about assessing people and their behaviors after each drink that they have, before they drink, and then after each drink that they have, to see is anything changing. Did they go to the bathroom and do something illegal? Did they take a Benadryl because their allergies are bothering them? So all of these things are important. The only thing that you have to remember is no matter what it is that they've done, you have to decide whether or not they can stay on the property or have another drink from you. That's basically my suggestion. That's
Keep
all
it
that we
safe,
do.
keep it safe.
Keep it safe, absolutely.
For whatever reason, like you said, the guy that fell asleep on the speaker, it's like, I mean, that's alarming, whether you're serving alcohol in the premise or not. It's like, buddy, are you okay?
That's right.
Right? Keep them safe.
And in that case, you know, the guy that was sleeping on the speaker, staff walked back and forth, back and forth, back and
Right.
forth, and didn't say anything. For at least 5 minutes that I was looking at
Aw.
this poor gentleman. So again, you're just gonna wanna make sure that you know what your patrons are doing and where they are and engage with them. Because if they feel safe at your place, they're gonna come back. If they've had a bad experience, maybe they, you know, were sick at, had low blood sugar and they were sick, they're gonna appreciate that you took the time to help them and assist them in their time of need, and they're gonna come back, because they're gonna feel safe in that establishment.
Thank you.
So moving on to overcrowding, the maximum capacity for an establishment is listed on your liquor license, which everyone should have posted in a conspicuous location. And that capacity is issued by the fire, building, or the Alcohol and Gaming Commission. Typically, it's the fire department that assesses capacity. And they assess the capacity based on the amount of people that can get out safely in an emergency. Obviously, exceeding those capacity is a danger to public safety, so that's why it comes on the list of the big five, and that we take very, very seriously. And you cannot combine your areas. So for ease of math, because I'm not good at math, we're gonna say if you have an establishment that has a main floor of 50 people, you have a second floor of 50 people, and you have a patio of 50 people, you do not have a capacity of 150 people. You have 50 on the first floor,
Right.
50 on the second, and 50 on the patio. Those separate areas that are listed on your liquor license have to remain separate. And you have to ensure that they don't go over your capacity. And that number also includes staff. So when I walk in to do a capacity count, I know that you're licensed for 50 people on the main floor. I'm gonna count your servers. I'm gonna count your bussers, I'm gonna count the patrons, I'm gonna count everybody in that licensed area to ensure that you're not over that 50 people. I'm then gonna go to the second floor, do the same thing, I'm then gonna go to the patio and do the same thing. So know your capacities. Tell your employees what the capacities are as well, because if they are on the floor and they know it's only 50, but they're, starting to get a little crowded, they'll let you know that. And ensure that you're keeping count. If you need to, use counters, an app on your phone is fine, have someone monitoring those areas. If you've got a patio and it all of a sudden starts raining, but you're at full capacity inside, then you've got a problem. So watch the weather, know what it potentially may do. Have a certain area that's blocked off for patio customers. Maybe it gets too sunny outside and you have no, sun covering. So everyone now wants to come inside, but you're over capacity. So again, you really have to know your space, know your capacities, and know the flow of people, right? If people are coming into that main floor to use the washroom and you're at capacity and now they're standing inside in a lineup waiting for the washroom, are you over your capacity? Are they now staying and talking to their friends at the bar as opposed to going back outside?
Of course they are.
Of course they are. So have an adequate flow of patrons and know that, your capacity is 50. So let's allot for those kind of moments and maybe only put 30 people in. Maybe only put 40 people in. So it's really dependent on your space. So just make sure that you do not overcrowd these.
Excellent point. People will be people, they'll wander around, right?
Absolutely.
Totally perfect.
Absolutely.
And I forgot about the patio and oh my goodness, it's raining. But
Yeah.
it's like, yeah,
That's a big one.
it's
So
almost like intoxication, you can't control like everything, so at least be aware of the signs, like you say, monitor, and look at the sky, oh my goodness, it's raining.
it's about to rain. Let's move some people around.
Shuffle this around.
That's right. So we're now going to go to after hours service. So in Ontario, you can drink alcohol at 9 a.m. You have to stop drinking alcohol at 2 a.m. There are 4 exceptions to that rule. New Year's Eve, where you can drink until 3 a.m. Daylight savings time, when the clock rolls back at 2 and then becomes 1, you have that extra hour. If we extend the hours, let's say it's the Toronto International Film Festival and we approve, service of hours until 4 a.m. Or you have a condition on your license restricting hours of service. So let's say that you've gotten into trouble before for serving after hours and you're failing to come into compliance based on a disciplinary measure. The Alcohol and Gaming Commission board could put on a condition saying that you have to stop serving at midnight, and that goes on your license. But if you have none of those things happening, 9 a.m. not a minute before, 2 a.m. not a minute afterwards is when you can drink your alcohol. Licensed premises must follow the rules 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, 365 days a year. So even if you are not serving alcohol, let's say on a particular day, but you're still open to the public, your license is still valid and active. You have to adhere to those rules all of the time. So you cannot have things such as private parties or staff parties and feel like the rules don't apply to you. They do. Your license is always on, can't be turned off. So adhering to those rules are really important. If you are open till 2 a.m. And you decide that you're going to stay open until that time, you're absolutely able to do so. But then people have 45 minutes to drink their alcohol. So between 2 and 2:45, they can drink the alcohol that's already been served to them. You cannot serve them more drinks after 2 a.m., even if they've paid for them. So if someone pays for a drink at 1:58 and you forget to serve it to them and it's now 2:03, if you serve it to them after 2:03, you're in violation.
Wow.
So ensure that no service happens after 2, and then they have from 2 until 2:45 to drink. And then by 2:45, all signs of service have to be cleared from all areas in the licensed establishment. So do not start your clearing at 2:45. Start it much earlier than that to ensure that there is no alcohol. If ourselves or the police come in at 2:47, then all alcohol is cleared. I often get the question, oh, well, we're closed now. It's 2:45. We're closed. The doors are locked. It's just staff in here cleaning up. Why can't they have a drink too? Yes. Would it be nice for staff to have a drink after a long evening? Absolutely. But again, like the slide before said, the rules apply to everybody 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. So staff cannot have a staff drink after 2:45 while they're cleaning up. We are out on the roads working until 3, 4, 5 in the morning. So ensure that your staff are aware of those rules as well.
Thank you.
So just to recap, do understand the Liquor License and Control Act and the regulations. Always facilitate inspections by the inspectors and police. So when we come to do an inspection, we'll always show you our identification. We will always tell you we're here to do an inspection. Please just let us do our jobs. Help us work. We ask for questions like we want to see your smart serve or your identification. We want to go into the back storage room. We want to go here, there. We do have that authority to do so. So please just facilitate our inspection as best as you can. Monitor all your area capacities, ensure all staff that are applicable, so like your servers, your owners, have valid Smart Serve certification. Do note that Smart Serve now expires. So if you got your Smart Serve prior to 2018, your certification does expire June 30th of this year. So you do have to take the test again. I took it as well, so it is one of those things that we now have to do every 5 years. The test is multiple choice, and you do have to be on camera for it. The course is approximately 2 or 3 hours. You can stop and start the course though and take a break, but the test you have to do all in one shot. So please ensure that your staff do have their valid Smart Serve. If they've taken Smart Serve after 2018, then they have 5 years from that date before they have to take it again. If you are in charge of buying your alcohol for your business, please ensure that you always use your liquor license number to purchase alcohol. Even if you're going to small manufacturers, wineries, breweries, ensure that they put your liquor license number on that receipt and keep those receipts for up to 1 year for us to check. Serve only during the permitted hours. So again, 9 a.m. until 2 a.m. Monitor patrons' consumption of alcohol at all times. Check ID for anyone that's youthful in appearance, and create, communicate, and enforce house policies. Don't allow anyone under 19 to consume. Don't encourage excessive drinking. Do not permit intoxication and unruly behavior. Do not permit the use or distribution of illegal drugs or the consumption of it. do not serve illegal liquor, so make sure all the liquor that you actually have on premises is from approved places that have a manufacturer's license with us or from the LCBO or beer store. You cannot have out of province alcohol from, let's say, Quebec or the States on premises. Don't allow areas to become overcrowded. Don't sell liquor for the less than minimum price, so know what those minimum pricing guidelines are. They're located on our website, along with service sizes. Don't allow noise from your outside areas to disturb your neighbors. So again, if you have a patio and you have speakers, please adhere to the noise bylaws. Noise does fall under the Liquor License and Control Act in terms of patios, so we will get involved if it is a patio noise issue. So just, respect your neighbors and don't promote the immoderate consumption of alcohol. So games and things that involve excessive drinking. If you have any questions, this is our 1-800 or customer service line in our website. My name is Jade and I have been your inspector for this 1 hour. You're certainly able to contact me, and I'm sure the Small Business Center has my information and can give it out. Is there any questions before I sign off for this session?
Now's your chance.
No questions? Oh, perfect. Bill's got the thumbs up. Thanks, Bill. Appreciate
Aw.
that. So if there's no questions, I will go ahead and sign off and thank everyone for having me, and best of luck this summer, and serve responsibly
Yeah.
and
safely,
and
yeah.
safely.
Thank you
Perfect.
so much, Jade.
Thank you, guys.
Bye, guys.
Bye. Thanks, Bill.